Alright, I'm ready to start. I'm going to draw a stitch line on here. Nobody's going to see the inside of this bag. This is going to be lined. The liner is going to be, I don't know if I'll make that separate video or what I'll do, but it's going to be a different kind of deal. It's going to be a cloth liner, a fabric liner, I guess. And I'll have a couple of pockets in there. One will be a zipper pocket, one won't be. Anyway, it's going to be a different video. But I need to draw a stitch line on here. Nobody's going to see this, so I'm just going to draw it on with pen. I'm not going to try to cut a groove or anything like that. I'm not going to get too terrible fancy. But to show you this ruler, I don't know how much I've actually, I need to do probably tools videos, some tool tips and stuff like that. But this ruler is marked, these marks on top here are in 1/8 inch gradations, whatever you want to call it. And it goes, and it's 1 inch. So there's 1 inch of 1/8 inch gradations there. It's a 2 inch wide ruler, and you can measure that if you want to. I got another ruler right here. The ruler that I've been using for forever. A little shy of 2 inches, but we're pretty close. But those 1/8 inch gradations are exactly 1 inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set here, and I can line up on the second line from the edge. And that will be 1/4 inch. I'm going to put my metal ruler up against it, just because I can draw a better line against the steel ruler. And then I have my line at 1/4 inch, and that's where I'll punch my stitching holes. Now nobody's ever going to see the stitching, all that kind of good stuff. It's all going to be concealed. So, you know, why do I want it? I'm not going to get super fancy with it. I'm going to punch holes on this side. I'll punch holes on this side separately. I'll just try to do my best to line them up. And, well, not my best. They'll be lined up. That won't be an issue. But they're not going to be the same. Because of the taper that's here, if I try to punch them through this way, they're going to wind up, you get this taper pushing down on that taper, so it'll kind of angle things down, and you wind up with your stitch line being off. And I don't want it off at all. But it's the way things are. It's not that big a deal. It's not off far enough to be any kind of a detriment. This one's longer, so I can still use the 12 inch ruler to get my 1/4 inch. I just need to go with a longer ruler here. And this spot is going to come later. I'll just do the same over here. To get my spacing for my first hole, all I'm going to do, I have my weaver chisels out here. 4mm spacing, or 4mm chisel. And that's what I normally use. Not using anything fancy, just because it's a bag. So if I go from the inside where my taper is, I know that my holes are going to be straight going through the other side. And like with any other chisel, like I've said in I don't know how many videos, you want to look at your tines when you're looking to see how perpendicular you've got your chisel, not at the handle. Because even on these brand new weaver chisels that I've got, I can tell that my handle is a little off from vertical. And anytime you want to check something like that, you can do that. this has got that cheese, the rubber thing on there. But you can do that with a square. I always suggest using the best square that you can get a hold of. A machinist square is usually within a couple thousandths of an inch of being square. Or usually a couple thousandths per foot, something like that. But I'm just going to go around watching my tines and just punch my holes. And I'm going to do that all the way around the whole perimeter of the bag. When you get to stitching it, well, and I'll show you when I get to stitching on the bottom, when you get to the corners, you got to get a little tricky. I'll show you that when I get to that. So, punched a few there. Let me go ahead. We'll make one set there. So when I go here, put the two together, I should be able to poke a hole through each one of these. And slide them together. They should be perfectly aligned on the top, and that needle should look like it's going straight through. And it looks pretty darn good to me. So I'm going to keep going here, punch all my holes. This will take a couple of minutes, and then I'll be back. I'm working on this tote bag, and I thought I'd show you a little bit about the handle that I like to use on these. It's kind of a trunk style handle, and they'll go down the bag. This will go down the full side of the bag, and I'll show you that later when we get into installing these actually on the side of the bag. So that'll go down, and they make a really nice, comfortable handle. I did these on the Tote, if you saw that bag. But basically I take this is a 1.25 inch wide strap, and inside of it, and I'll probably find something else eventually, I had this here. This is a 1/4 inch round leather belt. It was for my Singer 3115 sewing machine. Since when I put the servo motor on there, I switched to a regular V belt. So I had this belting laying here, and I used it for a couple of handles. But it's pretty simple. You just kind of lay it in there. I don't glue it in. That gives it a little movement, not much, believe me. And I just kind of leave the end open. I do put a piece of leather in the end there, just to kind of cover the end. It'll be stitched from this line all the way down. It'll be stitched down into the bag. So there's a little bit here that isn't stitched down to anything. So this will also add a little bit of reinforcement there. I do have stitch holes here, so there will be stitching there, so it'll kind of look like it's stitched down, but it's not. It's just a little reinforcement, and the stitching will look better that way. So I'll actually start on the first hole here, or the last hole of the stitching for the handle, right here, and then I'll stitch it all the way down. I'll go halfway across. There's 5 holes going across here, so I'll go halfway across, and then I'll go back and down. That'll give me double stitching at the main stress point on the bag too. So it's really pretty simple to do. I just punch holes down both sides of the strap, all the way down both sides, except where it's going to be tucked in at the bottom. And that's just because I don't need any there. It'll be tucked into under another piece. It'll go under this piece, which goes along the bottom of the side. And if I got to pick up and leave it sit overnight, I just take a clip, put it there to just kind of hold everything where it was. And it's more of a pain in the tush than anything. You just kind of run your needle through. And you'll notice that the holes are going, they're slant, you know, because they're an angled hole. They're angled in opposite directions, which is fine. It doesn't make any difference. Because you really don't notice any kind of an angled stitch when you're doing this. But you always want to do your stitch the same way. So I hold it this way, and I go from this side. This stitch comes over this needle comes over the top, and I just go through to the other side again, which can sometimes be challenging. It just takes time, patience. These, it'll take me an hour to sew this. This piece is about 19 inches long. And it's the only part that I'm doing right now. The rest will get done when I stitch it into the bag. So it's just, it's time consuming because you're kind of holding everything together as you're going. I could put clips on it. The clips just get in the way. They're here because I needed those earlier. But that's really all there is to it. I am going to line up this ruler because it's good. It's nice for lining things up against, to align things. I'm going to just kind of get it, and I'm going to use, remember I have a mark here at exactly where the edge of my handle is supposed to be. I moved in 1/8 of an inch, and then I have an inch. So I want to be at my 1/8 of an inch outside of this line, which is the mark that I made at the top. So that's where I want to be. And that's what I'm lining up on. Right there. I'm going to flop my weight on my ruler so that it stays. Now, grab my awl here. Get some of this backing off. Come on. Alright. Now this isn't going to really stick very tight until I make it. Watching my line on the bottom here, I should be able to line everything up there, and then everything should just line up as long as I line up off of my ruler here. Double check to make sure my ruler is in proper position. Alright. There we go. Now the top here is not going to stick down real well because I only ran my tape from about here. So all I'm going to do up there is I'm going to stick a clip. Ooh, that one's missing. Missing the plastic. The dip or whatever they put on there. So I'm just going to stick a clip there just to keep things cool. Now it's just a matter of doing the same on the other side. Now I'll do the same here. I'm just going to put a couple of strips of two-sided tape here. Alrighty. Now, before I stick that down, I'm going to check both ends to make sure that that's going to line up. Because that's going to be one of those critical spots where I want the yellow on the bottom to line up perfect on the top. And it will. So we're in good shape. Now I can stick the other part down. Now, this is a basting tape, so I can peel it back a little when I need to. When I stitch down, I'm going to come down far enough that when I backstitch, it's hidden under here when I stitch down the handle. So it'll be hidden under this piece. I'm going to be careful when I come across here that I don't... I'm going to punch my holes through here so that when I come down here, I can avoid, or my holes are already punched, so I don't punch my holes through my thread, if that makes sense. All my holes are going to be punched through the green leather before I start stitching. That's what I meant to say. Alright, so everything's in place. I'm going to go ahead and punch my holes, then I'm going to start stitching. You don't need to watch me punch holes, you've seen me do that 100 times.